Shefty.
Gentlemen, what's going on?
Schefty, is that the family there? Is that the actual insider behind you?
Yeah, she's laughing. Yeah. She's fresh off her post-game interviews last night on the field where I was her runner and assisting her and trying to get her whatever interviews I could. It was great. You know, everyone's doing their post-game things. Dylan, get your head out of the.
Hey, Dylan, let us tell you this. Keep your dad as your booker. That job stinks. Let your dad do it. He knows everybody, okay? And congrats on the great work this week, Dylan.
Oh, yeah. Great job.
No problem. Keep crushing it. Okay, Schefty, we were just talking about it. Sirianni's going into last year of his contract. We assume he won't be a lame duck coach. We assume there'll be an extension done this offseason. First of all, is that all accurate? And second of all, Liam, we just talked about it. All these guys just signed for $13 million a year, which is obviously a big number. This guy's going to get paid the most of all time, or how do you see this going with the Philadelphia Eagles?
No, well, I think what'll happen is they'll sit down to do the deal because Nick Sirianni is headed into the last year of his contract. You never want a head coach headed into the last year of his contract. Ben Johnson got $13 million a year, but not the other rookie coaches. Their other rookie coaches this year didn't get that. I think the pay cycle for those guys was anywhere from $10 to $13 million per coach.
Okay, got it. What about Liam? We heard Liam was like 13 or 14. Is that not accurate? That would be in that same window?
That's not accurate.
Okay.
That's high. He did not beat Ben Johnson. Liam did fantastic and obviously tremendously elevated his salary. But no, Ben Johnson came in the highest of the rookie head coaches. So if you're Nick Sirianni and you've won a Super Bowl and you've got a year left and you're sitting down to talk about your deal, I'm sure the Eagles obviously want to keep that number down, and Nick Sirianni is going to want to drive that number up. I think all of us right now could sit down and figure out what we believe to be a fair number. If Ben Johnson got 13, then Nick Sirianni as a Super Bowl winning head coach is worth more than that, right? So what is the number? Is that going to be 14? Is it going to be 15? I don't think they're going to pay him like the upper echelon coaches. I don't think so. But
why not?
Why not?
You saw that
well, okay. But by the way, that's the job of his agent to argue that.
Yeah, and his agent, Jimmy Sexton, we don't know everything about him, but we know enough. He's going to get a good deal.
Yeah.
And I like for everybody. He does good business. That's why he's able to continue to do business with everybody. But I think he's going to lay out a very easy case if he just used the stats that we have from our show for who and where Sirianni ranks in the history. Now, granted, he understands that Howie's been able to put together a phenomenal roster. Like this team, the players that he is coaching, all dogs, but he's the one that's getting all these dogs to bark in the same direction. So I think he has a lot of leverage, he has a lot of power, and hopefully they get a deal done because Philadelphia, with this style of guy being their coach, is awesome. And it's obviously worked.
You know what's funny about that? Number one, I don't know, 2-3 months ago, people were calling for his job when he had some emotional outbursts. Number two, his players love him. His players love him. Like, they believe in the guy. And they, I don't know, ever loved him as much as they do today when he's led them to the Super Bowl title and the players played great and he was the coach. But he's going to get a new deal. They'll redo it, and we'll see where that comes in. But I obviously fully expect it to be north of Ben Johnson.
Okay, hopefully they get that deal done sooner than later. Let's talk about that coaching staff, though, because some things were said last night maybe that make us believe, whoa, maybe not so fast, my friend. Shout out to Lee Corso. Go ahead, AJ.
Yeah, Schefty, what about offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, obviously? Is he just going to stay in New Orleans and take the gig? If he does, how much does he get paid? And is there a possibility that he is back in Philadelphia?
Look, there's always that possibility. I expect him to be the next head coach. And the Saints are going to make sure they do everything here by the book because the last time the Eagles found evidence of the Cardinals tampering, it cost the Cardinals draft pick compensation in the end. And the New Orleans Saints, who have been in the crosshairs of the NFL before, don't want any part of that. So they've gone out of their way to make sure that they're doing everything by the book. But if they were hiring the Dolphins' Anthony Weaver, their defense coordinator, they could have done that. If they were hiring Darren Rizzi as their interim head coach, full-time, they could have done that. If they were hiring Mike Kafka, the Giants offense, they could have done it. They didn't do any of this. They just waited, and they waited because they intend to hire Kellen Moore, assuming that they can get a new contract done. And again, that should not be a hard deal to do as well. Kellen Moore's making, we'll call it $4 million a year as the Eagles offensive coordinator. I'm not far off. I might be a little high, but I might not be. $4 million. The New Orleans Saints are going to come in and they're going to offer
12.
him, I don't know, I would say 10 or 11. Maybe it comes in at 12. I think it finishes up at 11 as the head coach. Are you going to turn down a raise to go from $4 million a year to $11 million a year? Are you going to let that happen? And by the way, are you going to let that happen a year after Bobby Slowick was one of the hot head coaching candidates for the Houston Texans, and a year later he's fired? Like, when you're being offered a job and you're being offered a raise of roughly $7-8 million a year, you're not turning that down. You're getting that deal done. You're getting that deal done, and I would expect that Kellen Moore is going to get that deal done and become the next head coach of the New Orleans Saints.
I don't want to counter here, but I heard Nick Sirianni say this last night.
Yeah, Vic's been a great coordinator in this league for decades, and he was awesome today. Kellen, let's run this. Let's run this shit back, Kellen. Let's run this back.
Congratulations, Coach.
Thank you.
Okay, so Sirianni is selling, I bet, behind the scenes on how special it is. But you said Bobby Slowick.
Of course.
Hold on. You said Bobby Slowick, which is certainly fair. I would argue Ben Johnson, though, with the Detroit Lions, where they dominated, took over, changed the offense. Jared Goff went crazy. That offense was the talk of the town in every town in the NFL. He got offered some head coaching jobs. He says, no, I want to go back. Now he's at the Bears making $13 million a year because he's even more highly coveted. So, with that being said, I understand what you're saying about taking the $7 to $8 million right now, but I think everybody on earth knows the Saints job is like 2 years out, right?
At least.
They're saying like the way that looks is like a 2 year out thing. So if Nick Sirianni, and I'm not saying Kellen Moore shouldn't take a $7 to $8 million bump. You do what you got to do for you and your family and your career and what your thoughts are. But in my head, Sirianni has a pretty good sell. Hey, we still got Saquon. We still got Jalen. We still got this offensive line. AJ and Devontae are dumping Gatorade on me. I think we're good there.
Yes.
Vic Fangio is still here. That D-line is young. So, Kellen, you could potentially run up the scoreboard here with the team that we have right now.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's how Sirianni sells that, right?
Oh, yeah, that's definitely how it sells.
Of
And
course.
Chip just got, six a year. I think he's the highest paid coordinator right now. And obviously it's much easier for us to say it here because we're not getting that $7-8 million raise and then, however 4 or 5 guaranteed. And Coach Sirianni, said, flame out there, you could probably get another OC job there. And I'm sure Schefter has a response for that, though.
Yeah, I'd assume so. There's some other big news that came out this week.
Yeah, I know Sirianni wants to run it back, but it seems as though they are not running it back with Aaron Rodgers up with the Jets. Reports came out about a meeting that happened, and basically left that meeting with the understanding they would not be running it back with Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. You got any updates in that situation?
Well, listen, I think we got a situation here where you got a new general manager, a new head coach, and when new general managers and new head coaches come in, they typically like to make changes and bring in their own people. There's a reason that a team is in the market for changing its general manager and head coach. And so when that happens, they like to reset the culture and establish their own culture. So I would think that that's a part of this, that the Jets want to go in their own direction and they want to start over. There's no doubt that Aaron Rodgers still can play at a high level. But the Jets are starting to build this again from the ground up, despite the fact that they've got some good talent on their roster. And so they're not expected to bring back Aaron Rodgers at this point in time. Aaron Rodgers will go somewhere else. He may try to take Devontae Adams with him wherever he's going. I would think with Aaron Rodgers not back, Devontae Adams is not going to be back in New York either. So, again, you start to see those changes of the most notable changes that they'll make. But whenever there's a situation with new head coaches, new general managers, you're going to see a whole slew of changes. And they usually start with some of the most significant people. In this case, that'll be Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, who I expect not to be back both.
I assumed, okay, that's a nice piece of information. Schefter, we appreciate that. So I assumed early that if Aaron wanted to play again, it was not going to be for the New York Jets because new GM, new coach, to everything that you said. Then it felt like there was a little bit of a groundswell. I think would be a right way to describe it. Like, no, maybe Aaron will actually stick around and then they'll draft somebody and then the Jordan Love thing where he's mentoring for a year as Aaron Glenn goes in there. And then that the news drops from Jay Glazer scoopage, hey, they talked, he's not being asked back or whatever. So we reached out to our source, says what we've been told is that Aaron's potentially out of the country. And when we come back, he's probably going to be on. Okay, so that's what our source says have told us. Now, I believe that is maybe for some time to figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
You know? I wonder how much has been figured out from this guy's side. Because I think walking away from the game, a lot of people would assume not possible, especially with how he played at the end and how everything went down. I've come to know that anything is possible with Aaron Rodgers.
Amen.
Anything is possible with Aaron Rodgers. AJ, do you agree with that sentiment with what I just said?
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, we heard he was going into darkness, Super Bowl ready to row. We had no idea what was happening.
Over that.
Didn't even know that was possible. Didn't even know that was a thing. There's a lot of things that I've just learned exist through this Aaron Rodgers, relationship. It's been cool getting to understand. He is. They call it his docuseries enigma. I don't think there's ever been a better word for a human. You know, it's like he is a special football player. Special football player. I mean, it is. His accolades go crazy. Everybody that's ever played professional football loves him. Every professional athlete's like, Aaron Rodgers is a dog. Like, that is literally how they talk about him. He thinks to his own drum. He goes along to the beat of his own drum.
Oh, yeah.
Very clearly. Always has. But at the end of the day, he's like a hippie who just happens to be a genius and also a football savant. So it's like, interesting. I've seen this guy in the middle of a living room jamming out with a guitar, singing, shirtless, long hair, I just walked into a hippie convention. Then I've been in a dinner where he's explaining something that I could never understand in my life. And then he starts talking about football and he's recalling blitzes that were coming from 2006. It's like, this is a special guy. But I think he's very comfortable with who he is. He's very comfortable with where he is. So I'll be very intrigued to see what he does. I assume he's playing football.
Yes.
Me. I assumed at the very beginning he's going to continue to play football, not for the Jets. That was without talking to him. That was just like reading the situation. I assume the same thing. Schefter, do you assume the same thing?
Yeah, listen, we'll see what he has to say when he's back on your show as a special guest and what your sources say.
That's a tease.
But
that's a good tease.
Say that, to me, my guess would be that he winds up playing. He's going to want to continue playing. I would guess he'll want to do it at a place that wants him, and their decision is not to trade Myles Garrett. The first one would be going into the new league year about a month from now. That would be the first time. The second time would be before the draft. And you'd like to think that if they're going to make a move, that they would do it before the draft because of all the draft pick capital that would be involved, except when you look back at the Khalil Mack trade, that was made on September 1st of that season, right before the start of the season. So there's no real deadline here. He wants to be traded. They don't want to trade him. Is there going to be a team that steps up? Like, I think there was a team that called Cleveland last week. I'm sure there are many teams that called Cleveland last week, and they told them, we're not interested in dealing him right now. Now, is there going to be a team that just stays on the phone and keeps calling the Browns and say, okay, well, I know you're not dealing him, but here's what we'd be willing to offer if you are. So, or is Myles willing to sit this out beyond?
I love that.
Again, I want to point out this. In the last few years, we had Lamar Jackson drop a trade bomb request the morning of the owners' meetings as John Harbaugh was going into breakfast with reporters. A month later, he signed a new contract. We had Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk both issue trade requests from the 49ers. Both wound up signing new deals, although Deebo obviously has another trade request now that the 49ers have told him that they're going to honor. So just because a player demands a trade doesn't always mean that he winds up getting traded. So this one still is in its embryonic stages. Ooh. And we'll see where it goes and which side.
Great descriptor. Holy shit, that was a great descriptor. That's the Schefter difference.
Yeah.
That's
Michigan.
That's a Michigan man right there. Yeah. I like the teams are calling, even though they're saying they're not going to trade him. Okay, we're just letting you know, though. Here's the offer. Right? 2 1s. 2 1s.
Think about it.
And you can get this guy. Just sleep. Hey, I know you're not trading him. Oh, why would you? Yeah. But if you want to get this, it's available for you. Just something to think about when you lay your head down at night. And Andrew Berry's like, we're not interested. And then at one point, Andrew Berry's laying his head down. What? And that comes floating. Mm-hmm. Oh, my God, look what the Eagles did with those picks. Look what the Eagles were able to do, turn around their entire franchise.
Hold on.
With those picks. Look what the Washington Commanders were able to do just with a couple good picks. If that could just...
Houston.
Look what the Denver Broncos just did with... I mean, there's so many...
Do you see what the Eagles did with Carson Wentz?
Yeah. Great tweet by you. I don't love it, because I was the Colts. You know, on the other side of that.
But by the way, that was a Colts Saints.
Thank you. Thank you, Schefter. Ladies and gentlemen.